Hello everyone and welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Douglas Johnson. I'm a yoga teacher, ordained minister, among many other things. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about meaning and meaning's relationship with suffering. Before I do that, I do want to thank everyone who likes, subscribes, and comments on YouTube, people who share these videos. This really helps keep everything going. And I especially want to thank everyone who contributes financially, even if it's just a small amount. So my patrons who contribute monthly, that help me approach this more like a job, and everyone who makes one-time contributions on Venmo, PayPal. And if you're interested in doing that, check out the links below. Okay, so meaning. For me, this is a very interesting topic, and this is something that has come, again, from the intersection of spirituality and manifestation. Is manifestation separate from spirituality? Well, not necessarily. I think it can be. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you are trying to manifest simply to glorify the ego, to make your ego bigger, to satisfy the ego, then it will not be spiritual. And anything that blows up our ego, makes it bigger, is just going to increase our suffering. And in general, spirituality is about reducing or eliminating human suffering. And the ways that we do that are called spirituality. So, can manifestation be a part of that? I think absolutely. And certain approaches to manifestation I've found so far there's a lot of overlap with very long-standing spiritual traditions, but there's also new information that I'm learning, or things that have been emphasized within manifestation communities that maybe aren't emphasized as much in certain spiritual communities. So, meaning. Buddhists teach that the source of suffering, amongst other things, is desire. But I think that actually meaning is it gets to the core of suffering more, in my opinion. I'm not saying that Buddha or Buddhism is wrong. I think that given certain cultural context, given a certain time and perspective, that teaching might have been right on the money, might have been perfect in getting people to move their attention off of things that were creating suffering for them. But for modern people, this teaching I don't think is as effective or useful. But meaning, I think, is. Now, I've spoken a bit about this before when I talk about facts versus our interpretation of facts, right? The suffering is in our interpretation of what is happening. So if, again, I get in a car accident, and that brings up a lot of things like, why does this always happen to me? This is going to be such a pain. I can't afford this. This is the worst thing ever. I feel a lot of emotional turmoil. Then this is going to create suffering. And that's coming from, again, my interpretation of events. Okay, not from necessarily the events themselves. Now, if I'm in a lot of physical pain, that's a different story, but we're talking really about the psychological aspect of things. Is there a relationship between the psychological and the physical? Probably. I'm definitely not going to rule that out, but I'm also not going to assert that that's always the case. It may be that if we get to a certain psychological level, we can overcome even physical illness, pain, those sorts of things. But I'm not ready to go there. I'm not ready to assert that. But let's just talk about the psychological pain. So I actually recently was in a car accident, and I could experience the ebb and flow, the suffering, that would come when I believed the meaning that I was ascribing to events and circumstances, versus when I could either not give them a meaning, or I could change the meaning to something that I preferred better. So again, facts are just facts, but what usually causes us suffering is the meaning, the story that we give to the facts. What do we believe is happening with these facts? That's what causes a lot of suffering. And this comes up in manifestation, where they say that if something happens to you and you give it the meaning, well, I'm never going to get what I want, or this is the end, or I have failed, then essentially what manifestation teaches is that that belief, that story, will actually manifest that reality for you. So what really manifests is our own story, our own beliefs about things. And that's why most of us believe that what we believe is true, because we keep manifesting it. So I've spoken before about the power of perspective. Perspective is so powerful. You could say spirituality is all about shifting perspectives. And when we shift a perspective, we usually have a different story, right? We don't have the same old story. We can see things from a different light, a different perspective, and that gives us the opportunity to create a new or different story. So some people who've gone through things like getting diagnosed with cancer, or losing a loved one, or getting fired from a job, whatever it might be, these people, some people at least, when they are able to approach these things from a spiritual perspective, they report back that these seemingly negative events were actually the best things that ever happened to them. So again, this is the power of perspective, of meaning. What meaning am I giving to things? This can have a huge impact on how things are going forward. Okay, so I can't change what was. I can't even change what is in this moment, because what is a result of past events, right? Maybe the next minute I can change what is, but at least in this moment, what we call the present, things are what they are. So a very important thing, both in spirituality and manifestation, is learning to accept the present moment, to not resist the present moment. So again, there is so much overlap. Okay, so as many of you know, one of my favorite spiritual texts or scriptures is A Course in Miracles. Partly because it's a modern text, also because it is based on Christian teaching, but a very different view of how most Christians see their own faith, and one that is much more in line with the perspective that I have. So the first lesson in the workbook for A Course in Miracles, there are 4 texts for A Course in Miracles, and one of them is a workbook, and you are given a sort of thought experiment or an idea for each day for years, so 365 ideas. And what you're supposed to do is use this idea and live with it for the day, and then you can move on to the next idea the next day. So this is a quote from that first lesson. You give everything its meaning. Oh no, sorry, here we go. Nothing I see in this room, on this street, from this window, in this place means anything. Okay, I'll repeat that. Nothing I see in this room, on this street, from this window, in this place means anything. Okay, so that's from A Course in Miracles. So what I was saying is you give everything its meaning. What is the meaning you're giving to things in your life, to your divorce, to your children misbehaving, to the illness that you were diagnosed with, to what your doctor told you about your health, to what you see in the mirror, to how your boss treats you, okay? We usually feel that we are the victim of circumstance and other people's whimsy. But is that really true? What if we were to tell ourselves a different story about what is? Another teacher that talks about this is Byron Katie. So she talks about how she loves a story about her dog and how she has stories about things and she just loves them because they make her happy. What she doesn't do is entertain stories that cause her suffering. Her enlightenment moment, if you will, was a moment where she saw that if she believed thought, she suffered. If she questioned thought, she didn't suffer, okay? So again, the Buddhist teaching about desire, while I don't necessarily disagree, I think it's tied up with this idea of meaning. So again, if I desire something and I believe I can't have it, or I believe that I need this desire to be fulfilled, to be whole, to be happy, then I will suffer. But from my perspective, that is one layer removed from the source, which is actually the meaning. It's possible that I could have a desire and then I give it the meaning that not getting this desire is the best thing that ever happened to me. Now, that might be difficult for you to do at first, and that's what's interesting about these practices in manifestation and spirituality, is these sorts of thought experiments, these ideas, they may not come naturally to us at first. They may not feel easy or even possible. Again, the lesson from A Course in Miracles, nothing I see means anything. I am giving everything its meaning. If this is true, and I believe that it is from my own experience, then why not give things a meaning that makes me happy? Why not give things a meaning that is in line with my goals and my desires and the life that I wish to live? Why choose or unconsciously keep choosing to give things a meaning that causes me suffering? Okay? So I think this is a very, very powerful key teaching. And again, it lives in that space of overlap between spirituality and manifestation. And as I said, right now, the way that I'm speaking is that these two are somehow separate. And I'll continue to do that, at least for the time being, because again, I'm rather new to the idea of conscious manifestation. My path to joy and freedom has been the path of surrender, which again is very much in line with the teachings of Buddhism and yoga, of sort of surrendering and giving up your desires, giving up what you think should be happening, giving up your plan, and just allowing things to unfold. Now this again, as I want to emphasize, has brought me a lot of peace and a lot of joy. Is this the whole picture? Is this the whole story? I don't know. And so that's why I'm exploring and looking into this idea of manifestation. Because while surrender might bring us a lot of peace, a lot of joy, it also perhaps is missing an aspect of just how powerful we are. This is something, again, that you see the seeds of in A Course in Miracles, where they talk about how we are the children of the Creator, of God, and we are created in that image. And we have the power and the ability to create worlds. We have the power and ability to experience the kind of day we wish to experience. Many people in the manifestation community will quote Christian scripture and A Course in Miracles in their teachings. So again, these are texts that to me are very powerful. There's a lot of truth in these texts. And if we look at them in a certain light, it sounds like through prayer not in the way that most of us think of prayer, but in the right way of approaching prayer and understanding the teachings, it is possible to manifest things that we would like to experience. Is there anything wrong with that? Again, I don't know. I suspect that maybe there could be, again, if there's a way for the ego to co-opt the teaching. I know that this can happen in spirituality. So in certain texts, they talk about people who have achieved spiritual superpowers. So these are called siddhis in yoga. And there are stories of people who could perform quote-unquote miracles. So people assume that they're a saint or that they are a great being. I had a student who had an experience with someone like this. So they had these powers and they would display them, and the student then assumed that this must be some very wise and powerful and great being. So they actually compromised some of their values because this person was asking them to do so. And it was only later that they realized that just because someone has certain powers, certain abilities, that does not automatically mean they're a good person, that they're a wise person, that they're a spiritual person. So is it possible for somebody to use the power of manifestation and not be very spiritual, not be very enlightened, not be a good person? I suspect that it is. According to the manifestation community, we're all manifesting always. You're already manifesting. The only question is, are you manifesting what you want or not? Okay, that's the only question as far as they are concerned. Now again, I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts of that because some people don't like to hear that. They think, well, I wouldn't have manifested this life. But no one is saying you're manifesting what you want. They're just saying that you are manifesting. That's what conscious manifestation is all about. It is about beginning to consciously use the power that you've always been using of creating your reality. This is what is taught in this community, that we are always creating our reality, and there's some evidence in science to back this up. So it's not as ridiculous a claim as we may be tempted to believe at first. So if this is true, then the question is, how do I manifest the reality that I want to experience rather than things in my experience that I would rather not experience? That's the only question. And so this brings us back to today's topic, where we're talking about meaning. And if I give things meaning, I can give them power, right? If my boss fires me seemingly unjustly, and I believe I'm a victim, I'm putting a lot of meaning into that, right? That I can be victimized, that I'm powerless, that other people are unfair. I could see that in a different light. And again, I know this can be challenging for people, especially people who are new to the path and to these practices. Very often our awareness is so closely tied with our story and the meaning that we're giving things. It doesn't really seem like there's another way to see things, but there's always another way. And so Byron Katie, again, talks about how if we have a painful story, we want to let that story go. And her process, the work, is a process of letting go of painful stories. And she actually has within that process a stage where you completely reverse something that you've been telling yourself or believing about something. She calls them the turnaround. So-and-so is a jerk. I'm the jerk. So-and-so shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done this. It's a wonderful practice because we can see how the opposite of what we believe is as true or even more true than the perspective that we have. And again, this is our power. You could call it a superpower to give things meaning. So as a conscious manifester, or even as a spiritual being, we want to be very careful on how we're using this power, because it's our power and we give it away when we give it to things of the world, when we give it to our boss to victimize us, when we give it to our partner to not show us love, whatever it might be. So I'd love to hear from you. What is your experience with this? Have you played around with giving things a different story, a different meaning, and how did that affect you, your suffering, your experience of the world? Please leave a comment below. Again, thank you all for listening, and until next time, namaste, and have a beautiful, beautiful day.